Hey Janet, hey Ashley, we just have a few more seconds till we'll get started. So welcome those who are just jumping on. Hey everyone, hello, it's Sunday again if you can believe it. I can't. I just got in late last night from, as you know, the road, and so that's the topic of today's Periscope broadcast is Tales from the Road. So just a couple things to set the stage for today. Hopefully you can see the beautiful Ohio fall colors behind me. And so a couple of things to get us started. Make sure that you comment at least once during the scope if you feel like it. That way it's a recording of who was on, and I'll be doing some drawings from time to time in terms of prizes. So if you comment at least once, I know that you were here and can follow up with you. So be sure to do that and let me know how the sound is or how the view is or if you have any questions and so forth. So I'm going to start today with a little bit of a theme setting. So as many of you know, I was traveling last week, and many of you were traveling last week. Many of you travel every week. And I was in Atlanta, Georgia, just briefly for the Division for Early Childhood Conference. And then I headed up to northwestern or northern part of Michigan. If I had my mitten on right, I could tell you kind of where I was. And so I thought it would be a good opportunity for me to just sort of bring closure to this week of travel. I met about 600 early childhood and early intervention providers in Georgia and in Michigan, and thought it might just be good to kind of share some things that we have in common, as well as some things that might inspire us, might help us move forward. But one of the themes for me was this notion of internal and external criticism. So I'm going to read a quote from, well, it's a kind of a paraphrase quote from a podcast I listened to with Michael Port. And so the podcast was on the Good Life Project with Jonathan Field, and he was interviewing an author and speaker by the name of Michael Port. And in this interview, Michael was talking about that there are two types of critics, an internal critic and an external critic. And he said, when the critics in your head, those would be the internal ones, are loud, the people in the cheap seats sound loud. But if you silence the voices in your head, it is hard to hear those people. So I thought I'd just take a second while we're getting kind of started today and let you think a little bit about your internal critics. And maybe you could post a comment on something that you would like to take this coming week as an opportunity to sort of turn down or in some way diminish that inner criticism. So maybe just take a second and post a comment on something that is an internal critic that you've noticed about yourself. For me, I've noticed that I really question many of the things that I preach about, but I have trouble when I go to put them in practice. So that would be an internal criticism I have of myself, is that somebody's not going to value what I believe is important. So sort of the overarching theme, anyway, the tells from the road, was sort of like I need to get rid of that or turn down that internal critic, because when I turn that down, then the external critic isn't quite so loud as I thought they might be. So if you'd like, take just a second, comment, and we can share hearts with each other about this whole idea of turning down this internal critic. If you're like all about turning down the internal critic, give some hearts. I'm just going to read some comments. Good. Love it. And it takes a minute to think of it, right? There might be a lot of critics up there. And so what sort of criticism can you sort of face this week and turn it down. And for me, it's going to be really moving into our first thing that I learned from the road. There'll be 3 I'll share with you today, which is that social emotional learning is like so critical across the lifespan. Like, I know it, I say it, I tweet about it, I believe it, but then I found myself at my DEC session with my colleague Myra Parata, and I could hear this questioning. I could hear the people in the cheap seats going, why are you wasting our time? Why are we talking about social emotional learning? Why are we not working on something that's going to promote, children's passing of the 3rd grade test? Or I don't know. I just could hear it so loudly. So I really got to thinking, this social emotional learning is so important, not only that we teach it to children and to families and to our communities, but that we really embrace it in our professional development. And I've blogged about it, and I'm sure Ashley will do a fabulous job on hashtag B2K Coach sharing that blog series about needing to promote social emotional learning in professional development, and that when we don't, we're really failing in our efforts. But it was really, really obvious to me this past week when I was traveling. And one in particular, and with her permission, I'm going to share this. A teacher in Michigan took my invitation to take 5 minutes and to journal. I had given the group several opportunities and several invitations to just take a minute to reflect. So how many of you have taken time the last week, last month, the last year to really reflect? And maybe what you want to do is, after today's Periscope, is just journal for 5 minutes. I said just take stream of consciousness, right? Just write. So you just write how stupid it is to be writing. That's fine. But she took 5 minutes, maybe even less than 5 minutes. And we were together all day talking about these challenges of kids and when they have meltdowns and how to reach them and how to connect with them. And so in 5 minutes, here's what this teacher realized. She said, I need to teach him to manage his own behaviors. I don't need to manage them. I don't need to teach during the meltdown. I need to help the kid get out of the meltdown, and then I can teach. I will remain calm, and I'll at least turn down my shark music. So that's that inner critic again. So these are 3 things, and this is in 5 minutes, and these are super powerful all by themselves. She's going to watch and see how the environment is for this child. Is there too much chaos, too much rigidity? You might check out the B2K YouTube channel. I posted a little blurb from my session at DEC today about being in the flow and how we need to look at the environment as chaotic or rigid for kids or for ourselves. And then she found that and remembered that he had a stuffed animal that was a shark. And we've been talking about this inner critic, right? This internal chatter, this shark music, if you will, that plays, and it often plays when we're really anxious about something. And she was saying that this was an opportunity to sort of use this shark and say, how's your shark doing? Is your shark feeling like he's thrashing about? Is your shark kind of swimming through the waters without a problem? And so she started to really think about this way that she could connect these ideas about regulation to this kid's little stuffed animal that just happened to be a shark. And so this teacher, she taught in a Catholic school, but her last conclusion was that she wanted the kid to center himself when he was feeling really anxious. And so she was going to have him bring his hearts at prayer center or into a prayer. It doesn't matter if you pray or not, but the idea was centering. And she was going to have him sort of, with his shark, kind of bring things to the center. And she discovered all these amazing things from 5 minutes of self-reflection. And here I was, anxious that 5 minutes was too much to devote during a professional development opportunity for teachers to engage in their own social emotional learning. So that was my first takeaway from Tales from the Road, that kind of is on this theme of not listening to my inner critic about really, really, really the power of addressing social emotional learning in ourselves, in our children, and of course in our PD. So then that led me to the second thing, which was what I blogged about this week, which was it's messy in the middle. And it's this idea that, we talk about triangles, so, in tiered instruction and multi-tiered systems of support. And there's this kind of like middle ground where no one's quite sure what to do with you. You're not quite special ed, you're not quite general ed, you're kind of in between. And what I was really recognizing is that as children get older and or as children have more diverse abilities, that middle is actually bigger and messier. I'm actually feeling like triangles are no longer a good illustration of really this dynamic thing that we call children and learning, and that this messiness, we need to embrace it, and that we need to blend our practices more and more so that we can address what's going on in this messy middle. And so I did blog about it, as I mentioned, this week, so you can read that a little bit more, and there's a link to an outline of a new training that I'm doing around how to teach in the middle. And so it's really helping early intervention teams, early child and special ed teams, pre-K teams, kindergarten teams, doesn't matter, really identify what do you teach when a kid's in the middle. We often know when a kid's, deafblind with autism, sure, know what to teach. If the kid is on track, we know what to teach. But this kid who has stalled or is struggling, what do I teach? And so, that critic comes back and says, you're not a good teacher, you're not a good parent, you're not a good home visitor, you don't know what to do with me. And so we sort of avoid this messy middle because that inner critic is saying we're going to fail. We're not going to know what to do because it's not really clear. And it isn't very clear. And so more and more we need to embrace this messiness, and we need to figure out what to teach and then how to teach. So that was the second thing, that this messy middle is an amazing place. We need to go there more often, but we need to do it intentionally. And that brings me to my third thing, my third tale, if you will, from the road. And it just brings us full circle with this idea of an inner critic. And so I'm going to paraphrase Michael Port again and just share briefly this little phrase that for me, I'm going to need to reflect more on, but I think it's really powerful. I think it's a game changer, if you will, because it really helps me kind of turn down that inner critic, which then, quiets the external critic, or those in the cheap seats who are out to judge and criticize. And so Michael Port talks about that our focus needs to be on results, not seeking approval. And I think that has many different applications. It could, of course, for me, I'm always seeking approval, right? Like, I love it when you give me hearts, or I like it when people retweet something, or I like it when people come up after a presentation, thanks for the hearts, and say, that really, meant so much to me. But really, if I keep looking for external approval, it's going to wear me down. It's going to wear you down. If you look for every family to love you, if you look for every administrator to give you all the stars, if you look for every kid to like you, right? It's going to wear you down. And so his comment, while it's a little business oriented, this idea of results, it kind of helped me think about keeping my eye on what I want, the experiences. If you remember from last week's podcast, Lillian Katz asked us, what experiences do we want all children to have? So if you don't like results or outcomes, think about experiences. And so if I keep my focus on the experiences that I want people to have during professional development and not worry about their approval, it's going to help me turn down that inner critic. So those are the three things that are my tales from the road this week. I'll recap them quickly, and then I'll do a quick call to action as we wrap up this week's Periscope. So the three things were, A, there's power in promoting social emotional learning at any age, and that even giving ourselves and one another 5 minutes to walk around, 5 minutes to reflect, we can find amazing clarity where we once thought there was no answer. And so I invite you to, Ashley will have posted a picture of this teacher's reflection and notes of just 5 minutes of how much clarity she got about how to help a child who was really struggling. The second tale from the road was this messiness in the middle, and that I'm kind of thinking that these triangles and these tiers aren't really depicting the complexity of what's going on, especially as kids get older and kids have more diverse abilities. So I invite you to learn more around our work around data-driven decision-making, especially for early intervention evaluation teams. And I look forward to connecting with you around how we can maybe provide training and coaching around how to teach in this messy middle. And then the third one, I want you to remember that I asked you to think about internal criticism at the start of this scope. What is some sort of internal criticism that you can turn down this week? And so if you're watching this after the live event, maybe you can tweet or email or just say to the world out loud, I'm going to turn down this internal criticism so that there is more room for me to focus on results and less about approval. And once I turn down some of that internal criticism, perhaps those who I'm afraid are judging me or evaluating me or whom I seek approval from won't be so scary or won't be so loud. So a couple of things, couple call to actions. Definitely check out some resources that we've posted recently. Myra and I periscoped our entire DEC session, but we're kind of cutting them into pieces and parts that are more manageable. So check out the B2K Solutions YouTube channel. You can also go to our website that Myra and I manage called Mindful Education Solutions, mindfuleducationsolutions.com. And there, all of our resources from the DEC conference are posted. So mindfuleducationsolutions.com, go to resources, and then go to the Soul Friends resource pack. Don't worry, Ashley's recording all of this in Twitter at hashtag B2KCoach, and you can get all of the links. You can also check out the B2K blog, where we've talked about the importance of social emotional learning in professional development, and really this new idea about this messy middle and how it gets bigger and messier with time and diversity. And so we really need to embrace that messiness in the middle. And then your last call to action before I jump off today is to reduce, diminish, get rid of, turn down the internal critic. And so I want you to take just a minute, either here with me, share it in a comment, or you can send it to a friend, or you can tweet it later, or again, just say it to the universe. This is what I'm going to do this week to turn down that internal critic so that there's more room for focusing on results and less on approval. So that is our scope for today. If you're just joining us, I'll post the live, this recording of the live event so you can listen back. I'll stay on if people have questions or want to give feedback or share. But again, your calls to action are check out our resources from our DEC session. Check out the B2K blog so that you can learn more about social emotional learning. And then your biggest call to action is to reduce the inner critic this week to make room for results. So thank you all for joining me each week, and I will see you next Sunday. I'll pause just for a minute in case anyone would like to ask a question or give more hearts, because you know we always seek approval, right? So have a fabulous week, y'all, and thank you again. I know it's a little weird for me just to sit here and look at my screen, but I want to give you time to type if you want to ask something or share something. And just remember that everything we talked about today is on Twitter at hashtag B2KCoach, if you use that as a search. And thank you again for the hearts. And then I will post this recording in about 5 minutes. And if you just jumped on or had trouble jumping on, you are welcome to replay it. And I did it under 15 minutes, so yay for me. Great. Thank you for your comments. Good to see you, Trudy. I look forward to crossing paths in Texas one of these days. All right, I see people jumping off, so again, have a great weekend, and again, thanks for promoting and supporting my work and the work of all of us fellow revolutionaries. I'm wearing my Grace Lee Boggs shirt today. Thanks again to my friend Janice Bialka. So have a great week. Thanks, everybody.